Scene 1 of Brienne's journey sets the stage for an emotionally fraught coming-of-age story about a young woman navigating her sexuality and the boundaries of her closest relationships. The narration makes clear that Brienne is only 19 and still figuring out who she is. She has grown up with Penny as a parental figure after her biological mother left, and her bond with Penny is deep, rooted in love, trust, and gratitude. Yet as she comes to terms with being a lesbian, she also finds herself developing romantic feelings for the person who raised her. This is a classic setup for an internal conflict, an exploration of how desire, attachment, and family structures can become confusing for young people who lack safe spaces and mentors to discuss their sexuality. The film wisely frames Penny as a good woman who is committed to ethical boundaries and to providing stability. We see that Penny has done nothing to encourage Brienne romantically. Instead, the scene focuses on Brienne's internal turmoil, her shame, her longing, and her attempts to redirect her feelings elsewhere by pursuing her teacher, Mrs. Mona. This plot point, turning to an authority figure at school, is also common in LGBTQ stories because it reflects how young queer people often seek validation and understanding from older, seemingly more confident figures when their peers or family members cannot provide it. Yet Brienne's attempt to connect with Mrs. Mona ends in rejection, leaving her more confused and vulnerable than before. The rawness of coming home, slamming the door on Penny, and later trying to find comfort in simply sitting with her shows how shame and affection are entangled. Many lesbians and queer women can relate to the awkwardness and despair of their first crushes or first confessions, especially when those crushes involve complicated power dynamics or age gaps. Women in general can relate to the film's portrayal of longing for closeness and then feeling humiliated when that closeness is rejected or deemed inappropriate. Rather than sensationalizing Brienne's attraction, the scene critiques the social conditions that make her feel she has no safe outlet for her feelings and no clear adult guidance. In a SFW and thoughtful way, Brienne's journey touches on why society has long hated seeing two girls in love. It is not only homophobia but also rigid expectations about gender, family, and morality that fuel condemnation. For decades, women loving women has been either fetishized or demonized. Rarely has it been treated as an ordinary part of life. This scene flips that pattern by presenting Brienne's emotions as real but also conflicted, acknowledging ethical limits while showing empathy for her confusion. The scene also raises the question of generational difference. Penny belongs to a generation that may still believe it is wrong to be intimate with women, while Brienne is emerging into a more accepting but still imperfect world. This generational clash mirrors real-life experiences, where young LGBTQ people feel more liberated but still live under the shadow of older attitudes. By showing Brienne's loyalty to Penny even as she struggles with her attraction, the film suggests that family-like bonds can coexist with self-discovery, but only when clear boundaries and communication are maintained. From an LGBTQ cultural standpoint, the scene underscores the importance of mentorship, community, and peer support. Had Brienne had access to LGBTQ youth groups, affirming counseling, or role models who could separate healthy attraction from inappropriate ones, she might not have found herself so isolated. This resonates with many viewers who remember feeling alone and desperate in their early years of coming out. It also invites empathy from non-LGBTQ viewers by illustrating universal themes of unrequited love, shame, and the desire to be seen. Ultimately, the first scene of Brienne's journey is less about taboo and more about the emotional and social obstacles that young queer women face. By presenting these struggles in a sensitive, SFW way, the movie opens up conversations about why visibility, education, and support networks are crucial. It also challenges viewers to think about how society reacts differently to young women's sexuality compared to young men's, and why boundaries are so important in relationships that involve power imbalances. Rather than vilifying any character, the film sets up a narrative about personal growth, responsibility, and the painful but necessary process of finding one's identity. For lesbian and queer viewers, this is an opportunity to see parts of their own journeys reflected on screen, not in a glamorous or exploitative way, but in an honest, sometimes awkward process of learning what love, ethics, and self-respect mean. By choosing to tell Brienne's story this way, the filmmakers highlight that coming out is rarely a clean, linear process. It is messy, human, and shaped by the adults, peers, and cultural messages surrounding the person. This scene captures that complexity with empathy and restraint, inviting viewers into the difficult but ultimately hopeful world of a young woman trying to understand herself. Scene 2 of Brienne's journey moves the story deeper into the emotional and ethical gray areas that the first scene established. After being rejected and feeling humiliated, Brienne tries to reclaim a sense of power and desirability by pretending to be Penny in order to lure Mrs. Mona Wales to the house. This choice immediately signals a mix of desperation and naivete. At 19, Brienne is still learning boundaries and consequences. Her impersonation of Penny to orchestrate a meeting with Mrs. Wales under false pretenses sets up a tense, morally complicated encounter. The film presents the scene without glamour or sensationalism. Instead, it focuses on the thick awkwardness in the room when Mrs. Wales arrives expecting to meet an adult peer, but finds only a vulnerable, eager young woman. By staging them close together on the sofa, with perfume in the air and palpable tension, the movie frames Brienne's longing and Mona's conflicted state as a microcosm of how power, secrecy, and taboo can distort relationships. For lesbian and queer viewers, this scene may resonate with the complicated process of trying to find mentors, role models, or partners in environments that do not always feel safe or open. Many queer women have had experiences of falling for someone older, whether a teacher, coach, or community leader, because those people represented the first visible examples of queer adulthood. The scene captures how that longing can easily blur into fantasies of reciprocation, even when the reality is far less simple. Women in general can relate to the discomfort of mixed signals and the danger of projecting one's hopes onto someone else's silence or friendliness. The dialogue about what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior functions as the scene's ethical spine. It suggests that Mrs. Wales herself is grappling with internalized rules and perhaps her own suppressed feelings, rehearsing a script about propriety to keep herself in check. This is a subtle commentary on how older generations of LGBTQ people, especially women, were often forced to deny their feelings or overcompensate with moralizing in order to survive in conservative environments. Brienne interprets this as evidence that Mona secretly desires her, but viewers can see it as a more complex struggle of someone trying to maintain a boundary with a vulnerable student. By portraying Mona's words as too rehearsed, the film critiques a culture of shame that leaves both parties confused and unable to communicate authentically. In terms of LGBTQ culture, the scene shows why safe, affirming spaces and clear role boundaries are so important. When young queer people lack community support, they may test boundaries with authority figures not out of malice, but out of loneliness and hunger for validation. Likewise, professionals and mentors need resources to navigate these situations ethically. The movie's SFW presentation allows it to explore these themes without veering into exploitation. Instead, it asks the audience to consider the social pressures that create such fraught encounters. This also connects to why society has historically hated seeing two girls or women in love. Not only does homophobia play a role, but also entrenched stereotypes about women as passive, pure, or available primarily for male desire. When two women express desire for each other, especially across age or power lines, it confronts taboos about female sexuality, independence, and agency. The discomfort viewers feel in this scene is mirrored by the discomfort society often feels when confronted with women loving women on their own terms. Yet the film also highlights universal experiences of longing, self-discovery, and mistakes, inviting empathy rather than judgment. By showing Brienne spritzing perfume, practicing seduction, and trying to step into an adult role she doesn't yet understand, the filmmakers capture the bittersweet awkwardness of teenage experimentation and the yearning to be seen as mature and desirable. This is not uniquely queer. Many women remember similar attempts to attract someone they admired, whether it was appropriate or not. However, the stakes are higher for LGBTQ youth because of the scarcity of role models and the stigma surrounding their identities. The sofa conversation about lesbianism being acceptable or unacceptable becomes a mirror for broader cultural debates. It dramatizes the moment when private feelings crash into public moral codes. For Mona, talking about boundaries may be a way of affirming her own identity while still fearing repercussions. For Brienne, hearing an older lesbian intellectualize her feelings may feel like a door opening, an invitation to step through to adulthood. The tension between these interpretations is the heart of the scene. The film encourages viewers to reflect on their own experiences of mentorship, desire, and boundaries, and on how cultural silence around LGBTQ topics can distort them. By not shaming Brienne but also not endorsing her choices, the movie occupies a rare middle ground of compassion and critique. It also models a SFW way to depict such a charged scenario, focusing on dialogue, body language, and inner conflict rather than explicit acts. For lesbian and queer audiences, this honesty can be refreshing, as it shows their stories without reducing them to titillation or moral panic. For straight women, it can evoke memories of first crushes, confusing relationships with authority figures, and the struggle to express desire in a society that polices female sexuality. Ultimately, Scene 2 of Brienne's journey deepens the film's exploration of how young women navigate identity, desire, and ethics in a world that gives them mixed messages about what is allowed. It portrays Brienne as neither villain nor victim, but as a young person trying to find her way, while hinting that Mona's own journey may be just as complicated. By grounding the story in these shared human struggles, the film transcends its specific plot to comment on broader LGBTQ culture and the need for honesty, support, and clear boundaries. In doing so, it invites empathy, sparks discussion, and challenges viewers to rethink their assumptions about why society still reacts so strongly to women loving women.